Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next 8 to 10 days in today's video, which would take us to the end of August, to the final day of August, the end of summer 2014, ending on a rather inauspicious note. I think we can safely say that it has been a front-loaded summer with the heat in the first part of the summer through June and July, and August, very different month compared to the other two summer months. Quite unusual, but it does happen from time to time. Last time we had a summer like this was probably 2010. Also going to have a look at the Beijing Climate Centre. I showed you the charts last week for the winter, the 500 millibar height anomaly prediction, but it's come up with for this month of the winter of 2014-2015. I'll have a recap on that and have a look at some of the past years at around this time. See what Beijing Climate Centre was predicting around this time. I did a bit of an update on that last week, of course. So there's been quite a lot of comment about it. Some of you wanted to see what it was showing in the milder years at around this time. So I'm going to show you the full rundown from the Beijing Climate Centre for August every year from 2008 up to the present year. Before I get on with that though, just say about the ads. There's video ads on my pages at GazWeather.com. Hit play on the video ad, you'll be supporting GazWeather.com. Thanks very much for doing that. So just to start off with central temperature from Hadley, because here we go, we've gone below average for the central temperature for August. We're currently standing provisionally at 15.7, an anomaly of just 0.2 degrees below average, so ever so slightly below average. I think we're actually a little bit more below average than that, probably around 15.4 or 15.5. There's usually a downwards correction of around 0.2 or 0.3 of a degree once you get to the end of the month and may calculate the monthly totals up. So we're probably a bit more below average than that, but anyway, we are below average now. That's the first time really in 2014, except perhaps for the odd day or two, but I've forgotten about. Every month so far has been significantly and substantially above average, with anomalies running around 2 degrees above average in most instances. May and June not quite so above average, but then we went back to nearly 2 degrees above average again in July with an anomaly of 17.7. But this month, August, surprisingly, I don't think many people were expecting it. The newspaper headlines a few weeks ago were all about August being the hottest month in the central temperature record. So the idea really from most forecasts, including myself, was for an above average month. I didn't think it would be that hot, but I did think we'd probably have another above average month. So it's caught most of us out, actually, what's happened this month, the turnaround in the temperatures. So if we have a look at, and I think probably going to stay below average for the rest of this month, by the way, because if we have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts here for the next 8 to 10 days, got the ECM on the left, GFS is over on the right. We can see that we've got below average height still in the Atlantic. The jet stream is running through something like that. A little bit of a ridge of high pressure forming on the ECM out in the Atlantic. I think that's just really a ridge ahead of the next area of low pressure, ahead of this area of low pressure here. It's generating a little bit of a ridge ahead of it. I think that's soon going to be pushed off. The GFS doesn't show that at all, actually. It has this deep area below average heights sitting around into the west of the country for 8 to 10 days time. As I say, this takes us to the end of August. It takes us to the 31st of August, so the end of summer, and the GFS is looking very unsettled right to the end of the month. As I say, the ECM is a little bit better for a few days, but I think it's only a transient sort of ridge forming ahead of the next area of low pressure. The general pattern doesn't look like it's really changing there, to be honest. The GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble show that we're significantly below average, of course, at the moment. Here's the 30-year average, the red line, we're well below that right now. We're going to lift up with those temperatures through the weekend into the start of next week, but only up towards average. Certainly nothing exciting coming up, and then we stick around the 30-year average going out to the end of August. This is September 1st. Just here, lots of rainfall spikes coming up next week. Going to be proper unsettled week there. And as we go out to the start of September, as I say, September 1st just here, we do keep precipitation spikes going even through the first week of September. There's no real sign there actually of a drying trend. So just have a look at the generic charts. Here's the GFS for the middle of next week, Wednesday. We've got a little bit of a ridge of high pressure to the north of Scotland, a little bit of northern blocking, but really it's low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, and that sort of strengthens as we go through towards the second half of next week. This next area of low pressure coming in just here, so it does look like it's going to be really quite an unsettled week next week. As we go through towards the weekend, the 30th and the 31st of August, there's that little bit of a ridge trying to form down to the south. It's ahead of this next area of low pressure. What the GFS does is very quickly flattens that off, so by the time we get through to day 10, the 31st of August, we bring this low pressure through. But just for a day or two, around Friday, Saturday next week, we may build some sort of a transient ridge up from the south, but I think it looks pretty much doomed with how active the Atlantic is, certainly on the GFS, and then it stays unsettled really going through to the first few days of September on the GFS. The ECMWF does a little bit more with that ridge, so here we are at the middle of next week, very unsettled, low pressure is in control. We are going to have a wet week of it next week, but as we get through towards the end of next week, it's Friday the 29th, we do build that ridge to the south a little bit. So I think it's just ahead of these areas of low pressure, but that's a little bit of a stronger ridge forming to the south for Friday, and that perhaps gives us quite a nice weekend down across England and Wales area at 1,020 millibars on the 31st of August, 31st. Quite a nice ridge there. Low pressure is still out in the Atlantic. I don't think it's a fundamental change in the pattern, and my suspicion that as we get through to the opening days of September, this low pressure will come in and push this ridge off. But I think just for a day or two, from around Friday the 29th to say Sunday the 31st, we may get a little bit of a ridge building down in the south. We'll keep an eye on it. Now, last week I showed you the 500 millibar height anomaly charts for the winter from the Beijing Climate Centre. They've updated for August. This is the height anomaly chart that the Beijing Climate Centre is throwing out this month for the winter of 2014-2015. It's a cold anomaly. We've got lots of northern blocking over Greenland. We've got a cold trough of low pressure around the country. That is a very cold sort of scenario, because what's going on there is that within that trough you're feeding in cold air out of the Arctic, out of the pole, you're bleeding it down into the mid-latitudes, into that trough of low pressure. So that is a cold scenario there that the Beijing Climate Centre is seeing for this winter. Now, I showed you a few charts that were for colder winters that the Beijing Climate Centre was forecasting around this time in August, but some of you wanted to see the full rundown of the cold winters and the mild winters, so I'll just quickly go through them. Here is the forecast from August 2008 for the winter of 2008-2009, the first cold winter in the run of cold winters that we had between 2008-9 and 2012-13. And as I showed you last week, it was going for northern blocking around Greenland. It was going for this cold trough of low pressure around the British Isles just here. So again, the idea of this is that you're feeding in the cold air into the trough out of the Arctic. So it was seeing that cold winter, that first switch to a cold winter in 2008-9 in August 2008. August 2009, for the winter of 2009-10, another cold winter, it was seeing that we get this area of blocking in the northern part of the Atlantic, a mid-Atlantic ridge. Got a cold trough here. It wasn't quite seeing the northern blocking over Greenland, hasn't quite got that, but sort of the idea is still there. The basic premise is that we're feeding cold air into that trough that's over the British Isles and across much of central northwestern Europe as well. Got below average heights, feeding cold air into it. Just hasn't quite got the extent of blocking over Greenland, but the idea, the pattern is sort of there. Now, 2010 is an interesting one because it's a winter, 2010-11 I should say, is an interesting one because it's a winter that sort of changes through the course of winter. So it starts off really, really cold in December 2010, and then as we go through to January and February 2011, it sort of we lose the cold and we revert to a much milder pattern. So let's have a look at how the Beijing Climate Centre was seeing things developing through that winter. We'll start off here for the anomaly for October to December 2010, generated in August 2010, and it was seeing a lot of blocking for that period. Lots of high pressure up over the Arctic, low pressure to the south. It's a negative NAO. You're feeding cold air down that way. So it was seeing a cold end to the year for that quarter, October to December 2010. Now for November to January 2011, remember this is generated in August 2010, again it's seeing a cold anomaly there. We've got the blocking up over Greenland, we've got the trough of low pressure to the south of it, again feeding cold air in from the north and the northeast. So again it's seeing a cold signal there for the quarter from November 2010 to January 2011. Now we get through to the actual anomaly for the winter, which is the winter of 2010-2011, so going from December 2010 to February 2011. It sees a change. We've still got the blocking as the anomaly up over Greenland, but what it's seeing is more of an Atlantic flow coming in. It's changing the orientation for that quarter from December to February. So it is seeing that the pattern is changing through the winter. We're starting off with a lot of blocking in a good position to deliver cold, and by the time we get through to the anomaly for December to February, it's seeing that change in the pattern beginning to occur. So that's a pretty good prediction actually from the Beijing Climate Centre. It was seeing that as we go through the winter, although we keep a lot of blocking around the northern latitudes, we do change the pattern quite a bit. This is the anomaly from August 2011 for the winter of 2011-2012. It's seeing a positive NAO really. We've got low pressure to the north, high pressure in the Atlantic, feeding the westerlies through like that, I mean, more or less across the country. So it's seeing the pattern. And of course no northern blocking there over Green, so it is seeing the pattern there for the mild winter really for the 2011-2012 in August 2011. Go through to this is the anomaly for the winter of 2012-2013 generated in August 2012. Seeing a cold winter, we've got blocking up over Greenland, we've got the trough of low pressure, the cold trough across the British Isles. So that's very similar to the scenario it's generated for this month for the coming winter actually, and cold air again feeding into that trough. And then finally going through to last year, where we go through to August 2013 for the winter of 2013-2014, when it's not seeing a cold winter pattern, but it's not seeing the pattern that we got either. What we're generally getting here is an area of high pressure in the mid part of the Atlantic and sort of westerly winds feeding through, something like that. So it's seeing quite a mild winter there, quite a mild pattern for the winter, but it's also seeing quite a dry pattern. Of course it turned out to be a phenomenally wet winter, so it hadn't got the pattern right. Low pressure was much more influential than that last winter. But it wasn't going for a cold winter either. It was going for generally quite a mild, dryish winter at this time last year for the winter of 2013-2014. So averaging it all up, I think pretty good performance actually from the Beijing Climate Centre. Most years it's sort of getting the pattern around this time of year for the coming winter. I do rate the Beijing Climate Centre quite highly for its seasonal predictions. I don't rate it so much for its monthly predictions actually, but for seasonal predictions I do rate it quite highly. It's sort of there, it's sort of getting the idea right, I think, on most of these months around the period of August for the coming winter. So whether it's got the idea right now for the coming winter, of course we can't say. We're going to have to wait and see what it generates next month. I think next month's update from the Beijing Climate Centre for winter will be highly anticipated. But it's not a bad performance there on most of the months around this time of year for the winters that it was predicting. So that's how that's looking, and come back to the next 8 to 10 days. We're in for an unsettled end to August. Going to have a very unsettled week of it next week, I think, and that could extend out into the start of September as well, although we may get a few days of dry weather right at the very end of the month into the opening day or two of September. We'll have to keep you posted on that. It's going to be JMA Friday tomorrow. We're going to look at both the month ahead prediction from the Japanese model and also the seasonal prediction for the autumn. It's extending now through the autumn, the Japanese model, so we'll have a look at some of the charts for that. That's really in anticipation of the autumn forecast, which I'll be doing on Sunday at gavsweathervids.com. So it's all starting to happen now in terms of the autumn updates and forecasts. So come back tomorrow for JMA Friday. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.